Hi everyone, Carol Ponsford here today showing you what I did with the 2023 StencilGirl Products StencilClub Set for June, created by Carolyn Dube. I knew when I saw it I wanted to do a weaving in my journal, so I got black paint, made sure I had 2 pages that I could put together to hide the back after I did the weaving. I painted the area black where I was going to do the areas for the weaving. Then I took Paper Artsy pewter and sponged through the stencil so that I would be able to see where I wanted to cut out the areas to do the weaving. It took a while for me to figure out. I knew I wanted to start on the back of the page and start the weaving, so I had to play around some with the actual lines to do this. So anyway, once I got it, you can barely see on the video that gray showing up where I would use a Stabilo white pencil and put marks down, and also the edge of the stencil that I wanted to do my cut line for the bottom. And I made little rectangles so that the fabric pieces would fit through. I actually used silk sari ribbon for that. And then I took an X-Acto knife and I cut off the bottom section and also all the little squares where I would do the weaving. Then I proceeded to take my gel plate and I laid the other stencil down. I knew I wanted to make the sari ribbon with bright colors, but I wanted each area to have a little bit of a black outline. So I took permanent black paint using my brayer, and I spread it across on the gel plate. And then I removed all the excess paint except for just a little shadow inside each one of those little boxes. So you'll see me spreading the paint around on the top of the stencil. The stencil will be staying down for a while because I have other things that I'm going to do also. And then I wanted to clean my brayer off so I didn't have the black dry on it. Then I took copy paper and just pressed it down and tried to make sure I got inside each of those little areas, open areas. And at this point, I should have lifted both papers off before going on to clean. But I ended up doing the right side again, leaving the paper on the left, which was a mistake because then when I went to pull the left paper off, it was really stuck. So it took me a while to get all the little fragments of paper off of the stencil, but I did. So then I took hand-cut rubber stamps that I had cut out of erasers with black archival ink, and in those areas that are showing the gel plate, I wanted to put some black marks because on a gel plate, what you put on the bottom is what's going to be on the top. So I wanted all these little shapes to be filling in those areas behind the colorful spots that I was going to put on there. So anyway, I proceed to do this all over the gel plate, and I fast forwarded there so you wouldn't have to wait while I filled in every single space. And then I let that dry, and then I took a sponge with 6 different colors of paint and randomly sponged over the plate to fill in those areas. Now it was time to remove the stencil. So I took the stencil up, which you'll see that each of those areas has a fine little black line around the outside, which is just what I was wanting to get. But I still saw a lot of open space on there, so I thought, I'm going to take a text stamp, and I picked up my Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz stamp and just stamped with the archival black ink, again, and let that dry. And then I knew I wanted the back one there. I flipped it over so you could see the back, and you'll be able to see what exactly is going to show on the ribbon. So I took the Paper Artsy Snowflake White but that was going to be almost too white. So I added a little heavy cream in with that. And here I'm cutting my sari ribbon strips. The first time I did this, I cut them and I printed them on the big strips and then ripped them in half. That was kind of a mistake because when I ripped them, a lot of the paint chipped off. So when I actually did the second pull, because I needed more strips, then I cut the sari ribbon first, which you'll see here later in the video. And I was peeling off the strips, and I'm very happy with the result that I got from the ink and the stamps and the paint. Some of them are a little grungier than others. This one, the paint kind of stuck because I didn't get it on there quick enough or I didn't have enough paint. This is the part where I'm showing you how I took the sari ribbon and cut them into half, or tore them into half strips first, and then did the printing. So again, I used the heavy cream and the white, snowflake white, and rolled the brayer. And I had a little snafu on this one too, actually, because on the top section, I didn't quite get enough paint. So when I peel it off, you'll see that, again, I have areas that did not lift off. So as I got down halfway, I repainted the surface, put more paint on, and that seemed to be better. I did that because I was afraid it was starting to dry out, so I added a little extra paint, and it seemed like that helped a lot when I pulled those next pieces because I think there was just a little thicker amount of paint on there. So I go ahead and proceed to place the rest of the strips on to the plate. And once I pat them down, then I take a copy paper and lay on top so I can rub down without getting paint all over my hands, which we all do that, right? Anyway, so I rubbed and let them dry kind of before I peeled them off. At this point, it might be a good idea to even place some books on top while they're drying. So I go ahead and peel off, and I'm much happier with those bottom strips with the amount of paint on them. Also, the fact that I don't have to rip them in half and then also have some paint chipping off. So I suppose if I had used fabric paint, which I didn't have available when I did this, then that might adhere better to the fabric pieces. But since this is going in my own personal journal, I didn't really care if it had some grunginess, which you can see as they peel off, they're getting grungier and grungier. I didn't peel the last two off because I could see that it was missing a lot of paint. I tried to go back in with some white paint and re-pull. That didn't work because, of course, the white paint went on top of the other parts too. But I had as many strips as I needed. So now I'm getting ready to start weaving them in. And I started from the back on the top hole and wove down through each of the path that I wanted them to take. And it's a little tricky getting it in, and you need to kind of pull them through a little slow because the paint will start chipping off. So it is a little bit of a messy project. So make sure you're in an area that you don't mind getting a little messy, but they brush up quickly. So I wove it in and out, and then I wanted large sections to show in that section where there's quite a gap between the two holes. And that was successful. I got exactly what I was hoping for, which made me very happy. Anyway, so I kept weaving down, and then after this one ends, I will have it shown to you that I've completed all the weavings. So it should clip right about now to the area where I've got all of them woven through. So, and I peeled off little strings as I went, just tried to keep some of the fray. I didn't mind some fray marks, but when they got to be really long ones, they were kind of getting in the way. So I left an area at the top that you can see because I wasn't sure if I wanted them long at the top too, a little bit showing out the top. But after I got to tearing them off and seeing what it was looking like, I kind of decided that I really didn't care for those on the top. So, because I was going to put a saying in that black area on the top left of the page. So once I got all of them trimmed off, then I started to go up to the top and trim them back just so I could give a good idea as to whether I wanted to keep them. And what I was doing is just snipping them a little bit and then ripping them off because I wanted those ragged ends on both sides. But as I looked at this, I was thinking, no, I didn't really care the way that looked. And I also had not painted the back page yet because I didn't know if I wanted it to stay white or if I wanted it to be black. And after getting to this point, I decided that I think I would prefer it black so that it helped to emphasize the strands that were hanging down and kind of give them a place to shine and have the black showing through behind them. So I took my black paint out again after I turned the page here, took my black paint out, and now I painted the bottom section of the back page only in the areas that the torn pieces that were hanging down were going to show. So I just put a nice layer on there. And another thing I would suggest, I'm not a real fan of shiny paint, and I used acrylic, which after the fact, I was thinking I should have used black gesso because then I would have had a nice matte finish, which I would have preferred more. But I can always go back over the glossy with a matte medium to tone that shine down. I just haven't done that or didn't do it while we were on camera. So anyway, now that's all dry, and now I'm going to tape down with masking tape those ends that are sticking at the top because I don't want them to pull through. So I'm taping those down good with masking tape before I adhere the two pages together. So I just took random little pieces and just made sure they were connected down nicely before I started adding the gloss or gel medium. And I used Golden's regular gel medium to adhere the two pages together. I got a palette knife, and you can see the golden right there. And I took a palette knife and I did a liberal spread. I was generous with it because maybe liberal wasn't the right word. Anyway, I was generous with it because I wanted it to really get a good adhering because I knew there were fabrics that were going to be bumping and kind of keeping it up. So I just put a generous amount on there, and it should forward here to where I folded them together. What I did is I left the page down and folded the back page onto the front page and kind of pressed from the center out, then flipped it over and repositioned, slid it into exactly where I wanted it, and then started pressing it down. And of course, because I used a generous amount of the gel medium, it started oozing out of some of the areas, so I had to go in and wipe those down because I didn't want my fabric to get stuck to that because I wanted them free-flowing. So after that, I started thinking about where I was going to position my writing, and I used a Stabilo all-white pencil, and I had written it out on a piece of paper similar in size. So I drew the lines that you can see there at the top now with the white Stabilo so that I'd be able to wipe them away, and then took my Posca marker and entered in my saying. So that completed the page, and I was very happy with it. I might go back in and just do some kind of embellishment right under the Found Your Destiny. But anyway, that's my page. Thank you for checking it out, and I will see you next month on the Stencil Girl blog to see what I do with the July stencil set. Thanks for coming.